All right. So welcome to the orientation. Hopefully you guys have gotten a little bit of an overview from your um, campus coordinator or program coordinator. But this will go into more information about the program. Um, we will get started. Feel free to ask any questions in the chat, but I will stay on a little bit after the official presentation is done to ask or to get any additional questions answered. I highly suggest if you're not using your phone to take the quiz, orientation quiz that will be due at the end as we go, as opposed to um, just at the end. But I will also post the link directly in the chat if you don't have access to another, like your phone or something. The orientation outline is as follows. So we'll talk about the fellowship program, the history of national service, the benefits coming to you out of the fellowship, a little bit more about the onboarding process, requirements and policies of the fellowship. We'll take a look at monthly forms and how to track your hours and your time. A little bit about what to do when you're getting ready to exit from your term of service, and then we'll go back to the orientation quiz. So a little bit about the fellowship program. The One Utah Service Fellowship was enacted this last legislative session and is housed under Utah Code 92301. Our program is administrated out of USU as opposed to at the University of Utah or at Weaver or any of our other programs, which will come up at a later time, most likely. This is a non-competitive living allowance program, which means if you have completed your onboarding and you are enrolled and actively serving, then you have there's not going to be a competition for like your education award at the end. When you begin and complete your term of service, all of the benefits that we'll talk about are available to you. Our members complete a service in 3 different areas: healthcare, education, and capacity building. And all of our fellows complete their terms of service in Utah. So we don't allow participants to go to another state to complete their hours. They have to be completed in Utah. We have a handful of goals for the fellowship. So the first is to create a generation of civic-minded leaders with the ability to bridge divides and solve problems. The second is to help Utah students graduate college on time and with less debt. And the third is to address societal challenges and help build more equitable communities across the state. So one of the big reasons to participate is that you are an asset that brings value to the site and communities that you're serving in. It also looks great on the resume. But really, for participants, you're effectively getting paid for the time that you're spending doing what you're already doing. So for students, if you're in class, if you have to do clinical, practicum, internship, or externship, if you're getting college credit for it, you're already effectively doing the service. We're just adding some additional benefits. And for non-student young adults, this is a way to gain experience in professional development and gives you insight into what you might like to pursue while earning the living allowance and additional money without necessarily having to take a step into a career or commit to going to school if that's not where you're at right now. Phoebe, I will post the quiz link in the chat at the end. AmeriCorps is like the domestic version of the Peace Corps. We are a network of national service programs that actively engage Americans domestically. So we are part of a large network, more than what I'm sure more than a million um, participants have served since over the last 30 years. A little bit more about our program. So AmeriCorps is the federally commissioned organization, agency that covers all 50 states and Guam, Puerto Rico, um, and other territories. You serve Utah as the state's governing body for service and volunteerism, so they handle all statewide. And then the One Utah Service Fellowship Program facilitates the opportunity for high school graduates or GED recipients to get connected in the long-term reoccurring service. So our main focus area and demographic is young adults who have earned a diploma or GED, but are not yet like 29 to 30 in most cases. We talked a little bit about that. Benefits of service include a monthly stipend. So most of you will be receiving an equivalent of $10 an hour. An equivalent value. Some of you, depending on where you participate, will have a larger stipend, just depending on how your program has set up your term on your behalf. We also have the Eli Siegel AmeriCorps Education Award, which is a post-service benefit. The Member Assistance Program. So this is actually a really great program that it's completely free to you. It allows you to have 3 confidential in-person or phone counseling sessions. It also has various other support mechanisms like a personal assistant, a travel assistant, various workshops and conferences and things like that we will share with you later on in the year. Member and alumni events throughout the year. A certificate of completion and optional letter of recommendation. If you would like one, professional networking opportunities, loan forbearance opportunities. So after a successfully completed service, the National Service Trust will actually pay at least a portion of the interest that accrued during your term of service. If you have like a government student loan, the National Service Trust will pay that. And then for anyone who is not or is currently a student, graduation regalia will be included. A little bit more about the Siegel Education Award. So depending on how many hours for your term of service, directly correlates to how much you will receive in education award. So that ranges from just over 400 to just under 7,400. Education awards can be used to pay qualified student loans, to pay towards current educational expenses, so up to the cost of attendance. So that may include tuition and fees, but it can also include what a school considers included to being cost of attendance. So it could be housing costs, transportation costs, food costs, books, licensing, things like that as well. Or you could save it up for up to 7 years if you don't want to use it right away. Back to the living allowance basics. So per the state code, our minimum living allowances are as follows on the screen. Keep in mind that living allowance is not tied to hourly service and is paid in equal disbursements. So if you're serving a 300-hour term, you would receive, and over 10 months, you would receive $150 every pay period, with a bi-monthly pay schedule. In order to receive the living allowance, you do have to serve at least 1 hour during a pay period. So if you are about to take a break or something, you still, in order to receive payment for that specific pay period, you do need to at least have 1 hour claimed. Multiple lump sum payments are not allowed, and so if you like finish your hours early, we are still paying you on the agreed pay schedule. So consider that. And then also note that FICA and income taxes will be withheld from the living allowance, as well as any state or local taxes as indicated by your completed W-4. So if you have any questions about the W-4 or how to complete it so it best supports you, please let us know. In terms of responsibilities, there are a couple. So recognize that your term length has been determined by your host site or by your program. Most of you will take an academic semester to an academic year, but if necessary, a term of service can be extended to 12 full months. You are required to complete 2 tracking forms every month until you are exited from the program. And if at any time you choose not to and you do not communicate with us, you can be exited without award. So your living allowance will stop. You won't receive any portion of your education award. And then you will also be required to coordinate a project or event that will benefit your site or local community directly. And we call this your volunteer mobilization project. A little bit more about that. So during your term, you will be required to recruit 5 non-AmeriCorps members to contribute 1 hour of their time each. There's not an age requirement. You can facilitate this project on-site or off-site as long as it is benefiting your site or local community. And I highly recommend utilizing 9/11 Day of Service and the Martin Luther King Jr. Days of National Service to gather community members to get involved with the project. Examples of a volunteer mobilization project include utilizing like your community engagement center to see if they have any short-term volunteer projects. Like the Benyon Center at the University of Utah has little packets that you can take home with you, gather some friends, follow the instructions in the packet, do the activity, and then take it back to the Benyon Center. There are plenty of ways to do like an item drive or a clothing drive in support of your local community. But the direction that we really want you to go is to have a conversation with your host site supervisor so that they can tell you what your site needs in order to make it most beneficial for everyone involved. So the onboarding timeline does require a prompt and timely response. So make sure that you're checking your email frequently for correspondences from the One Utah Service Fellowship and your campus coordinator. If at any time there are items that are not completed, we cannot enroll you, and so it will delay your start date, and you will lose out on the time that you're supposed to be able to claim. Keeping in mind, enrollment dates are normally the 1st and the 15th of the month. If you are enrolling with a cohort, your date might be different, but you'll want to keep track, and we will let you know what that date is. Keep in mind these dates are tentative and dependent on the completion of your enrollment tasks and the clearing of the background checks that we'll talk about in a minute. One last reminder, if you have recently been married or divorced and you have a name that you use socially, that's not your legal name as it matches your social security card, please make sure to only give us your legal name, and then there's also locations for you to add other non-legal names. An overview of the process. So right now we're in the orientation, and then afterwards you'll complete the quiz. Following a successful pass of the quiz, some of you might have already filled out the fellowship information form and scheduled your fingerprints. But for anybody else, you will get information to complete that form and schedule your fingerprints. You will then also be given the information to complete your position description, and then access to your payroll setup, your myAmericorps.gov account, and your IPT enrollment, your IPT account. A little bit more about fingerprints and background checks. So all enrolling members must pass a level 3 background check. The first is the state level check, so that means fingerprinting. The second is a federal check, so social security number and citizenship status check, and a national sex offender background registry check. Keep in mind, we as the program pay for your fingerprints and your background check, which is why we need you to scheduleize with our authorized vendor, as well as make sure that you're completing and letting us know if there are any changes to your appointment. Once we've verified your appointment, and you will receive the instructions along with the live scan form, which pays for your appointment and tells the vendor that you're with our program so they can transmit the information correctly. So you'll want to make sure to take the form that we email you with you to your appointment. Keep in mind, automatic disqualifications for serving with our program include a murder conviction and anything that requires someone to be on a sex offender registry. Any other offenses are at the discretion of the service site. So definitely make sure that if there's anything that would come up on a background check, no matter how minor, that you have taken the time to fill out that enrollment information form. So that we can have a conversation before we have to have a conversation. As I mentioned earlier, there are 2 term accounts that you will need to have access to. The first is the IPT, or runipt.com. This is the state website for tracking your hours and reports. For any of you that are used to online school or online usage, think of it as your school's Canvas account. This is where all of the assignments will be due. Keep in mind that some of the information that you'll put into both sites overlaps, they are not the same. They are at 2 different levels, and so yes, we do need them both. Within your IPT account, there will be 3 forms. The first is the member application. So this collects basic information as well as emergency contact information and gives the final verification for the background check. Please complete this first so that you don't have to spend more time retyping things into the EEV and the MSA. It will auto-populate if you do the member application first, so please do it first. The second is the EEV, so this is, the self-verification for the program, and then the third is the MSA. So the position description that we'll talk about in just a minute gets uploaded into the MSA, but the member service agreement is the shorthand agreement that we cover covers topics from the orientation as well as the member handbook, policies and procedures and guidelines, but also gives you just the basic information about your own term. So how many hours you're completing, how many, what your living allowance is going to look like, things like that. Your position description is going to be completed by yourself, your site supervisor, and your campus coordinator. Although your site supervisor and your campus coordinator may be the same person. The position description gathers the contact information for your site supervisor. It summarizes the types of activities that you're allowed to count freely without additional approval, and verifies that anyone signing off on the form understands the requirements and allowable activities. The other account, I guess the second account, is the myamericorps.gov portal. This is the federal website for maintaining your education award. So you will get an invitation to accept your term of service at this level. Fill out the form information there. And then you really won't use it again until the end of your term when you are ready to certify that you've completed your term of service and then go to accept your award until the National Service Trust where you want the form or where you want your education award payment directed to. So think of it more as like the federal aid website. You rarely use it, but it is quite important. Completing the enrollment form in this account also kickstarts the Social Security number and citizenship checks. So make sure that you do it quickly once you receive that invitation. And if you have any problems accepting the invite, please make sure to email us. Keeping in mind, because your living allowance will come directly to you during your term of service, make sure that you've contacted your campus coordinator about the completion of your I-9 documents and your payroll setup. We'll have more specific information to follow up with you. Keep in mind the University of Utah and Weber State University will have payroll go through them as opposed through OUSF. There are a small list of things that AmeriCorps participants cannot participate in while they are wearing anything that identifies them as an AmeriCorps member, or while they're counting hours towards their service term. What that means is that whether you're on or off the clock, if you're wearing anything, you have a sticker, a lanyard, a pin, a hat, a sweater, anything, please do not do any of the things under these 4 categories, including political activities, religious instruction, access to services, or advocating for or against groups. AmeriCorps is supported bipartisan, and so anything that could potentially put funding at risk is really a no-no. We encourage you to do any of these things on your own time, but please do not do them while serving. Some additional policies that your site supervisor should be enforcing. All of your service hours should be taking place within the state of Utah. You should always be wearing something that identifies you as an AmeriCorps member, so a button, a pin, a lanyard, a name tag, anything. Your site should be displaying an AmeriCorps poster, and should have the prohibited activities list available somewhere at their institution or at their host site. And then if by any chance film, media, interviews, anything like that happens, you really should, you must identify yourselves as an OUSF AmeriCorps member. All right. Additionally, we do have a non-duplication policy. So at any time, you should not be performing services or duties that postpones hiring a staff member, does something that a state or local government agency already does, causes an employee volunteer a reduction in wage, benefits, or hours, or will supplant any services that are currently supplied. Really, what that means is that you should not be participating in an activity unsupervised, really, at the end of the day. Our member handbook and service agreement. So please make sure that you review the member handbook and the policies and procedures guidebooks that are available on our website. You do have access to grievance procedures in case there is something that happens within the program that you don't believe is fair or appropriate. Please keep in mind that specific offenses, including sexual harassment and drugs in the workplace, can also be found as topics in the member handbook. But members who commit certain crimes during their term will be exited from the program without award, without question. But if there is any law enforcement contact during your term of service, please let us know so that we can take appropriate measures. All right. Once your onboarding is complete and we have certified your enrollment, you will receive an email verifying your start date. You will be required to complete and submit 2 reporting forms each month, your service hour record form and your monthly progress report. Keep in mind, all forms are due on the last day of the month, not the following month, but the current month. I need to change that. So for example, August forms are due on August 31st, and you need to submit forms even if you didn't serve hours in that month. And there are specifics for how to do that. Our capacity building folks, if your area is capacity building, which you will know by the time you finish filling out your position description, you will receive a guidebook that looks similar to this, but it will explain how you can count hours, which descriptions you should use when counting hours, and so forth. So member development is important. You need to put it in the first column. And direct service is also important. You need to put it in the second column. Keep in mind that the system auto-calculates all of your time. So if you put hours in the wrong column, it will not calculate it correctly. And for example, if you put all of your hours in the member development column thinking it's not going to be an issue, it will be, because there is a limit for how much member development you can claim. So capacity building has these areas. Healthy Futures is very similar, but the descriptions for days activities is a little bit different. Education as well has the direct service descriptions that are a little bit different. So make sure that you're getting the guidebook from your campus coordinator so that they can, or your coordinator, overall coordinator, program coordinator, so that they can, you know exactly how to fill out your forms. Keeping in mind, as I said, there are limits to how many member development hours you can complete. So 100 hours, 100-hour term is 20 hours, 60 hours, 90 hours, 135 hours, 240 hours, and 340 hours. So as I said, in your IPT account, under your dashboard, you can find the complete total for all of your monthly forms within the account as you've entered them. So not as it's signed, but as it's been entered. The other form is your monthly progress report. So in this section, you will enter information about your personal individual demographics. So really more specifically, if you are in the military or active duty, and if not, did you participate in any disaster service projects this month? Normally, this will stay the same throughout your entire term of service. It just depends. You'll also fill in some information about the populations that you've served, some focus area reporting questions, so very specific to your focus area. Please do not answer any questions that are not your focus area, even if the question sounds like you should answer it. Every focus area has a specific metric that they are working on fulfilling. Only answer the one for your focus area. So if you're capacity building, only answer the capacity building questions. If you're education, only answer the education 1 or 2 questions depending on who you're serving. Okay. Additionally, you'll have the service hour narratives. So this is where you'll go in more in depth. These are full sentences where you're talking about what your service was. So if you're doing member development, what your training was, what your meetings were, what your reflections were, what you were doing there, and for your direct service activities, what you were doing for direct service. More specific than program management. You need to use full sentences. Let us know what you were doing. Section 5 is the great story. So this is a reflection space, and it does have some prompts to get you started if you're not sure exactly what to talk about. And then at the end, the volunteer mobilization project section will show up in every monthly form. But you do not have to complete a volunteer mobilization project every month. You just have to complete that section when you have completed it in the month. Again, the monthly forms guide will be resent to you as a digital copy once you have been enrolled with that enrollment notification email, but certainly do ask your coordinator for a paper copy to keep with you. Keep in mind that if you are late in submitting your service hours, there will be disciplinary action in the form of a verbal or written warning, and we may also suspend your service and withhold the living allowance until your forms are completed and up to date. If there is a reason why you can't submit your forms on time, please contact us and let us know so we can work with you as opposed to having to make executive decisions. If you get to a point and you really can't complete your hours, if you can't complete your term of service, please make sure to discuss any mental or physical health issues or other concerns you feel will interfere with completing your hours immediately. First with your campus coordinator, and if they can't find a solution, make sure to keep in contact with us. We have lots of options to assist you throughout your term. But even if the answer is that we need to exit you early, as long as it's done proactively, we have the ability to at least exit you in good standing and with a partial award, as opposed to having to make executive decisions on your behalf. So please let us know if there's anything that comes up that you need to deal with or you need to step away from your term. Additionally, if your service site has any issues that we need to be aware of, please let us know, but definitely make sure that you know your site safety protocols and you know how to handle dangerous or threatening situations and emergencies. When it comes to exiting your term of service, make sure that you contact your coordinator and inform that you need to do a final review of your forms and complete your exit term evaluation and your exit form. You should definitely visit our website for exit instructions, but you can certainly just use your coordinator. They can get you the same information. After your end of term evaluation is complete, our staff will do a final audit and let you know if there's anything else that needs to be adjusted. And then when all of your forms in IPT are correct and complete, you will be directed to certify your term hours in the myAmericorps.gov account. So again, going back to that other account for the end of your term. And then once certified, your education award should be available within about 2 to 3 weeks. In terms of requesting your award, recognize that your award is processed through an institution financial aid office. So if you are not currently a student, make sure that you are aware of your plans in the future, or if you're planning to use it towards like a student loan, that you know who you need to be contacting at your loan servicer. Please recognize that once you've been exited from our program, the One Utah Service Fellowship staff cannot assist you with the details of your education award, and we will direct you back to the National Service Hotline for specific questions about where your request is in the process, and things like that. All right. Here is the quiz again. Looks like Aubrey also posted it in the chat. Thank you, Aubrey. If anyone has any questions, please let me know. But I will stay on to watch the quizzes come in and get you off on your next steps.